On today's episode of Supervision Simplified, we're really excited to have with us Khara Croswaite Brindle. She is the co author of The Empowerment Model of Clinical Supervision, which is a terrific text around a really valuable model of clinical supervision. And she is also the co creator of the Electronic Supervision Record. So join us for a great conversation about supervision, the future of resilience in clinicians, and some data that she's collecting. We're happy to have this conversation with her today, and we hope you enjoy it. Hello, and welcome to Supervision Simplified. I'm Dr. Amy Parks.
And I am Valerie Harris.
And today we're so excited to welcome our colleague, Khara Croswaite Brindle. She is here from Colorado and joining us today to talk about a lot of supervision topics and specifically about her book that we have here in front of us, The Empowerment Model of Clinical Supervision, and some exciting projects that she has going on and some things that she has on the horizon. Welcome, Khara.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh gosh, I'm a serial entrepreneur, so that's going to show up in this very quick intro.
We can relate.
I am the
You're in good
co-founder of
company.
this model. Yeah. Yeah, multi-companies, good company with you both. Let's see. So I'm a licensed professional counselor here in Colorado, approved clinical supervisor, certified financial therapist, and professor. We're talking about my second business, which is Supervisionary and the empowerment model. So I'm co-owner of that business, co-founder of the model, and co-creator of the Electronic Supervision Record, just to name a few things.
Nice.
Yeah, we're excited to talk all about those things. Exactly. Tell us a little bit about the empowerment model of clinical supervision. So this is a well-worn copy of the book that is going to be a textbook soon. And tell us a little bit about this, how it kind of came about, what its origin story is.
Yeah, absolutely. So the origin story is I had horrible supervision in graduate school and didn't
Ooh,
know how bad it was
we
until I
want to
left.
know. We want to know.
So in a nutshell, I had two supervisors in community mental health as my internship supervisors who uh, took that supervision role and blurred it to the point of they were trying to treat me as a client instead of a supervisee. So at one point, they looked at me and said, Kara, you're too composed. We want you to cry. Yeah, and I know listeners cannot see faces right now, but, like, that
Oh,
is
they
the
can
reaction I
see your
got from
face.
Oh, they
They're
colleagues.
will.
videotaping this.
They
They
can.
can
They
see
will.
your
It'll
face.
be on YouTube. It'll be, yeah, that should
Yeah,
be a clip because my face always it always
I
does the
love it.
thing that
That is so
everyone's thinking.
validating. Thank you.
Yeah, because that's like, what? I'm sorry, huh?
Yeah. So, at that point, a couple other things went kind of awry in my internship. They were making demands of me at the very end, blah, 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 blah. So, I was actually kind of traumatized from that leadership experience and went into community mental health, where I interviewed with Christina, who's now my co-owner of a business. She was my first supervisor outside of that horrible experience. And she looked at me and she said, Kara, what do you want in a supervisor? And I was just taken aback. I was like, I get to choose? I get to ask? I get to say, can we have a boundary where I'm not your client, I'm your supervisee? And she's like, absolutely. Yeah, we can. And I was like, this is healing. So that's where it all started. 2 years after that, she promoted me to a supervisor. I had 15 green clinicians under me. We were all in people's homes, active DHS cases. And at that point, I was building my leadership style. I was healing. I was saying, I'm going to do something so different than what was done to me. And then
Yes.
fast forward a couple years after that, Christina's like, hey, you actually are doing a great job. I think we have something here. Like our supervisees are telling us this is working. We feel confident. We feel empowered. We need to write about this. And so that took a couple years to like go into the bravery of, oh my God, we're going to write about what we're doing. Like we just do it naturally. Now I have to conceptualize this to other people. And in 2019, the book was written with the model captured.
And so how did you realize that really, I mean, so there are a number of supervision models. And
Mm,
how did you realize that there wasn't really a model? So if you look at sort of the empowerment model graphic that I marked here. So this is, I mean,
yeah.
it's on this cover, but it's more detailed here. How did you sort of come about? Well, I guess you can't really see it because it's blurry, but how did you come about this idea of the colleague, the leader, the consultant, the researcher, the teacher? How did you find that sort of combination there? Because the model that I really kind of came up with was, or came up in, was this consultant, you know, consultant, colleague, teacher. But really the leadership part and the researcher part, like
Mhm.
those parts have not really been embraced in the same way that you really have brought into this.
Yeah, yeah, and I've actually heard that recently where people's like the leader role is not embodied in a lot of other models, which is fascinating to me because I feel
Yeah.
like it just shows up in what we do when we're championing and trailblazing in our field. So what really stands out about our model is it's fluid. So it's circular, as Dr. Amy showed. And so the models that I was trained in to become an approved clinical supervisor was from 2005 and was a stair step model. So
Mhm.
it implied, like you just named, we start as teacher, we move to counselor. Notice
Mhm.
there's no counselor in ours, and then to teacher, and then to colleague or something like that. And so it implied this like stagnation where you had to like stay in a certain role. And who knew when you had to move from that? Like it wasn't very clear to me.
And you
And so our
graduated
model,
up after you
yeah,
kind of accomplished some certain sort of stair step goals,
yeah,
right?
Like a scaffolding.
absolutely.
Like, "Oh, once you've learned this,
Exactly.
you'll never visit it again," like the original grief model. Like, where you're like, "No, no."
Yeah, that's not it. So I was really determined to have it look circular in the sense that we move between the roles as our supervising needs us to. One minute they need us to be a teacher saying, here's how you do a suicide assessment. The next minute they want us to be a colleague and saying, I'm feeling burnt out and emotional and vulnerable, and I'm not your therapist, but I will hold that for you. And then let's get you some referrals. So, like in our minds, it's like you just bop around this model at any point. You could have all five roles embodied in a 60-minute supervision if you needed to.
Mhm.
It was really contingent upon what your supervisee needed, not how you wanted to show up.
Wow, I love that, and when I hear that, what I think about, um, Amy said her model, I kind of well, I take from a lot, but very attachment based and attachment
Mhm,
focused, and it kind of just blows my mind that there's not an attachment based model out there that's strong and solidified. Because to me, it's very similar to what you're saying. It's just the idea of being a safe base at all
right.
times. And part of that is moving in and out of the different places with boundaries in places that they need to be with each of those and stating it like, okay, this is the clinical supervisor part right now, so it's
Mhm.
kind of like an IFS and a little bit of attachment. But I like that you picked up on that too, because that was definitely where I noticed a lot of limitations in the current models.
Yeah, and I think the last thing to highlight is that self is in the middle of our model, right? So we've got these five roles, but something we always start with when we train people is like you as a person shapes
Yes.
how you're going to show up as a supervisor. Your lived experience, your own trauma, your personality type, your communication style, your attachment, right? Like all that
Mhm.
stuff shows up as just how I'm going to look different alongside Christina or alongside one of you as a
Yes.
supervisor. We're all training the same model, but we show up differently. And I think that hasn't been captured either in other models.
No, no, you are 100% correct. And then that relational dance as a part of that with your supervisee is gonna be different from the relational dance with another
Mm,
supervisor, and that doesn't ever seem to be really captured either.
right. I feel like you have a book in you, Valerie. Like there's a book here now for you.
She does. Valerie has many books in her. There's no doubt about that. And
Many
one of
books.
the areas, speaking of books, one of the areas that Valerie and I are really working towards is this idea around leadership and supervision. And
Mhm,
so the idea of the empowerment model and the fact that there is this leadership part in the circular model of supervision is very intriguing for us because we see, as you have seen, so many supervisors and supervisees really grasping for the opportunity to know and understand and embody the role of a leader without
mhm,
knowing really how, and
Mhm.
really
mhm,
without guidance. And we had a podcast, we had a conversation, Valerie and I, and then with a couple of guests a few episodes ago, that it's so sort of sad, in our profession that, like in every business in the land, there is no CEO of a company that doesn't continue to grow as a leader through training. There just isn't.
Mm,
It doesn't exist. They don't just throw you out there and just say, "Okay, so you go lead Pepsi," and or Google or whatever, I don't know, whatever, name any company in the world, and just do it just because you just naturally are born to be a leader. Everyone gets
mm,
training. But in our field, we don't continue to grow leaders through
right.
training. We just say, just figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's and so supervisors inherently are supposed to be at that forefront of leaders, of leadership.
Mhm.
And yet we don't continue to encourage that ongoing training in supervision, in that role as leaders in the art of supervision. And
Mm,
so I really think that this empowerment model has that opportunity to really say, like, it's not only just a model of clinical supervision, but it's a model of training supervisors in the art of leadership.
mm,
Mm.
I like that.
I mean, it has a part 2. Like, it
Yes.
It
has
does.
like a next iteration. I know this is the 2nd edition, but it has a next iteration. Like, there is a there is more to being a clinical supervisor. These are the people that are leading the next generation. Like,
Mhm.
it's inherent in us to be moving beyond um just supervision. I mean, there's supervision of supervision.
That's right.
Yes. That's my favorite.
So that's kind of what we've been talking about and really kind of championing. So I'm just wondering, have you been thinking along those lines too? Have you been doing that kind of thing, Kara?
Yeah, I mean, when you say we're never done learning, that resonates a lot with me because, like, I think if we think we're done, that's a huge red flag for me. Of like,
Yes.
you're not ever done. There's always something because the world is continuing to evolve. What we needed in supervision today is not the same as 10 years ago, even,
Mhm.
right? Like, there's just different things going on. In 2019, when this book was written, I had done 5 leadership trainings. Like, I was like on my own little quest. I think I was a little addicted to
Yeah.
leadership trainings that year. But that was where I did my own work. Like, that was my, as
Yes.
in lieu of therapy, I was sitting with these executives and these entrepreneurs, and we were all like having a heavy cry over our core beliefs and leadership training. So I like where this is going. And we have one of our things on our online platform. We have a leadership course called Supervisor Empowerment Academy. And it's like 6 hours of the things I grabbed and learned and made my own from leadership trainings. Because people are like, show me how to like communicate, show me how to deal with critical incidents,
Oh,
show me how to handle performance issues. Like they wanted that content. They didn't want just like the supervision clinical pieces. They're like, this is awkward. I hate confrontation. Show me how to do this as a leader.
yes. Yes. Are you
Absolutely.
familiar with, I don't know the name of the model. I know it's a German model. Similar to you, I have been probably in the last 12 months on a leadership quest because I realized I was
Love it.
not a great leader and was like, "Oh, this is not the same as being a supervisor or a counselor. And this is not easy and I need to figure this out." So,
Mhm.
in that process, working with a leadership coach, he had taught me about this developmental model or this model where it's basically like the different hats that leaders wear. It's a German
Mm,
model. And how you have to have balance. And there's like 4 different hats. And so I could see errors that I was making at times because I was only carrying like I was looking at 2 hats that I was, like, holding, and one of
mhm,
them is, kind of like opportunity or something for the business. I'm not stating that correctly. But the other 2 hats are my assistant clinical director often carries, and one
ah,
of those is concerned human, just being a concerned human. And so when you're over here so focused on, like, business goals and initiatives and things like that, it can be really easy to see your human capital as the means to that and forget that you need to be the concerned human. And so that
mm,
helped me to go, "Oh, wait a minute. I need to recognize when that's happening and how often and back up." And so I really like what you've done with this because I guess I'm just here to validate it and state that it overlaps with leadership so much in that we are such complex human beings. Like, we are full of
Mhm.
complexity, and we can't really just be, you can't really just, I don't want to say, you can't dumb it down to like a four-step process. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it really is about being able to flex and adapt in an efficient way and within your own capacity, and honor and respect those parts of you and observe the necessary limits while also doing that with the person sitting across from you. And that
Mhm.
very much goes in line with that. So I think it's beautiful.
Aw, thank you, and I love,
Yes.
like, you're saying it's an art form, that resonates, like, this really is an art to do what we do in mental
Mhm.
health.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we really do believe that and champion that. And so in addition to your model, which obviously we're big fans, you have other supervisory and supervision kind of, activities that you're involved in, not to mention all the other things that you're involved in too. Other books that you've written and other exciting projects. But do you want to talk about your app that you're working on? Or it's not really,
Yeah,
I guess, an app. Well, it is an app.
Ooh.
it's a web-based app.
It's a
Yeah.
web-based, okay, yeah. So talk to us about that because I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, so beginning of this year, 2024, we launched the Electronic Supervision Record. So this is an ESR, which is meant to replace the EHR of our client work.
Which we
So
will link
Christina,
in the
this
show
is
notes.
thank you. Christina, my co-owner, co-part, counterpart, as I like to call her, my other half, she was like, "This needs to feel separate." And I was like, "Tell me more." Like she actually had to pitch this to me because I was like, "We're gonna build this. Like, tell me why we're gonna build it." Because I'm also that stubborn person who hates change, if you can believe that. So she's like, "Here's why we need this." And she's like, "If you're working with a supervisee and you want to like navigate something even on your computer as you sit alongside each other, it'd be very problematic if they saw client stuff that is your clients in your system," as one example. But the other example is when we have our clinicians, our supervisees, and our EHRs, they're coded as clients, which feels ick to me, right? Of like they're not
Mhm.
clients, they're supervisees.
Mhm.
So, long story short, she wanted to create a system, a place to house the supervision notes for clinical supervision. She wanted a place for, discounts on trainings, templates that people would want, access to the videos we've created. So, she wanted to create this like very much healthy container to be like, this is where your stuff lives if you're a supervisor,
Yeah.
especially if you're an academic or that's all you do is supervision. But you don't need all the bells and whistles of an EHR, that our ESR could do the trick.
Genius.
I love it. I love it. So I have a little Kara sent me a bunch of little bookmarks that have the information about it. And one of the things that I think is great about it is that it also allows you to invoice your supervisees through it.
Mhm.
So you can do all the things that you would do with an EHR. But one of the things I would wanted to mention, Kara, is that part of the ACEs supervision subcommittee's best practice recommendations is a statement about the content of a supervisory note. And so I was thinking that I don't know if you have like I know that it has something in there about a note template, but I was thinking that it would be really cool for you to be able to include like the best practice note template from ACEs because that might be
Yeah.
something that you really
Mm.
want to think about. I'll send you the draft so you can look at that.
I
Oh,
love
yeah.
that. Thank
I
you.
know. I'm like, I need to log on and look at that because I just created my own note template, and I don't know if it's right, good, helpful, but it's useful for us. But it would be nice to kind of see what's recommended and then what y'all have done as well.
Yeah,
Well, the last time
absolutely.
ACEs put out a practice, best practices was in 2011. So we
Mhm.
obviously are ready for an update. So that
Yeah.
will be new information. So how are you feeling about the ESR and how is it taking off?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think obviously the people who gravitated first were folks who are like, "All I wanna do is supervision, so I don't want this $99 EHR, I want this more affordable option." They like that there is a note template. So Christina, again, was like, "This is what I would do." She actually does 90-minute supervision, so that's a little different than a lot of us, but she's like,
Mhm.
"Let's make sure there's a place for critical incidents. Let's talk
Yep.
about what roles you embody." It's like calling back the empowerment model for folks who love it. Let's talk
Mhm.
about, cases that were staffed and what are the next steps or outcomes or homework for your
Mhm.
supervisee. So the template really just created like this streamlined system for people to just like check the boxes, write the things you need to
Mhm.
write, and then bill. As Amy, you were saying, like this is all integrated in. So invoicing, scheduling, all lives in here, and so we just want people to have a place. So far, I'm hearing good things. Of course, as a Type A person, it was painful when there was bugs that we had to find as we launched. Like, uh,
I
like I
get that.
really
As
don't
the
like
owner of the
bugs.
clinical supervision directory, the bugs drive me nuts. I
Ooh.
get it.
Yes, it's like
As the one who has
emotionally
not gone
painful.
into the tech spaces to create anything new and
Yeah,
techy, I just honor those of you who do because I'm already like, but if I can't make it perfect, I can't do it. And
No.
yeah.
yet, yet that's just part of the process. So y'all, it just means you're right where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, so, like, we did our beta testing, of course, with some awesome supervisors in our network who were like, "Yeah, I'll happily beta test this for, like, a discount," or, like, we offered them some trainings for free. So that worked out the bigger bugs, but I just had a bug last week, and I was just like, "Man, my ego just can't take this every time," but I'm working on it. So that's for my own therapy. But, yeah, like, hopeful it's gonna expand into, like, internship programs, into universities. Amy, I know we talked about that offline. But right now, we're just like trying to make sure it's working as it should, and we have lots of dreams to enhance it from here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there's tons of potential for the CSD and the um the ESR to work together. So we absolutely need
Same.
to, yeah.
Yeah, I'm over here going like, "Wait a minute." I have
Yeah.
I have, like, student development models here to take, brand new clinicians to trauma competent clinicians who are confident and
Mhm.
ready to roll in record time. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
think
think,
this
yeah,
would be
absolutely.
a beautiful marriage between
School
the 3
models,
of us.
definitely. Yeah, absolutely. So what are you thinking about, Kara, for in supervision? What are you seeing sort of on the horizon? Are there things that you're seeing, at least in Colorado, or maybe even, locally, or maybe even nationally, that are things that you're excited about, maybe even maybe possibly worried about? Are there things that you're thinking about licensure wise, supervision wise, industry wise, that you're kind of, I don't know, thinking about, maybe worried about?
Oh gosh, there's so much here. So let's see if I can keep myself on track.
Okay.
The things I'm excited about, I am trying to help develop the supervision framework and take the empowerment model into financial therapy, which is a smaller specialty. There's 100 of us that are certified. There is no supervision in this yet. And so I'm like, this needs to be a thing. So we're trying to build
Mhm.
that. So even on our website, when people land on there, it says mental health professionals and financial therapists because we're talking to two different groups of people around supervision. So I'm happy and excited to help build out that. Um, in Supervisionary itself, I'm also happy to start talking about adverse psychological events for mental health professionals. So I currently have a
Mm,
study. There's 77 clinicians who have done an anonymous survey telling us what have they experienced in this field that is contributing to burnout, contributing to them leaving the field. Things like client suicide, client violence, grievance, subpoena, things that were just like, I can't manage this on top of the client trauma. And it's heartbreaking to see what they're telling me, but also like very like validating of like I knew how impactful this was with my supervisees and myself. But now I'm seeing other clinicians all over the US telling me, here's what's going on. So at some point in this month, I should have a report to give out to people and be like, this is what we know about our colleagues. This is what they're going through and the impact. So symptoms,
Beautiful.
implications for staying in the field. So I'd love to continue to do trainings around that because that's that leadership piece again of like, how do
Mhm.
we
Yep.
respond when our clinician comes in saying, I just got a text that my client died? Like,
Yeah. How do
what
you
are we going to do as
maintain
leaders?
capacity under chaos? Like, you've got
Yeah.
and yet you have to, like
Mhm.
you have to, and so it's balancing the 2 things, which is incredibly difficult and taxing, and
Yeah.
definitely nothing that they talk about in school at all.
Right. No one's preparing us for this. So, like, this is like at my heart and soul what I want to do as a confidential grief specialist, which means I'm talking with clinicians about things they can't talk about anywhere else, like client
Mhm.
suicide, or just because it's client confidentiality, right? Like, I can't go to my spouse and
Yes.
say, here, let me give you a play by play of my client who died. I mean, obviously, they can see the grief, but giving them this like safe space to do that work is where I'm
Mhm.
headed professionally myself. But then Supervisionary is also going to like house some trainings. So we just put a training out for the Supervision Summit on adverse psychological events. So excited to see what people think about that and what that looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're really excited to have that as an opportunity for the Supervision Summit because it really is an interesting sort of multi-layer thing because you've got the client and the supervisor, the clinician, and the supervisor. So you've got these multiple layers of
Mhm.
support there that it gets very complex.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and fun story for all I mean, your people are gonna hear so much about me apparently, I'm just gonna overshare. I had 2.5 of the adverse psychological events that I've typecast in this survey in my first 3 months on the job. So I had
Wow.
Christina as my supervisor, I was healing from leadership trauma, and then had 2.5 because it was a threat, it wasn't actually gonna happen. But, like, I was like, "Am I really supposed to be in this field? Like, 3 months into the
Wow.
job, am I supposed to be doing this right now?" I'm so glad I, like, powered through, but part of that was because of Christina's leadership and having people
Right.
around me who are like, "Hey, I've got you. I've got your back."
Yes.
This is
Or just
tough.
having someone who would have sat down with you initially and said, "I need you to know that, like" I have to tell our students, like, "You're not getting clients in practicum. It's not happening. Like, you need to
Mhm.
learn to be a clinician before you're responsible for clinical care, and you will get hours, we'll figure it all out, but you've got to develop your window of tolerance and get
Yeah,
capacity for being in the room with people who are in a lot of pain."
right.
And you just don't know until you're in the room with people in pain, and so when you're sitting alongside another therapist, at least you can get co-regulation as you're sitting there, so and you're not responsible for that care, and you can start to slowly build some capacity because they just wanna rush right in, and it's like, "No, I will not do that. I will not allow you to do that." So even I feel
Yeah.
like it's as part of that gatekeeper role, it's preparing them for what they're gonna see and hear so that it's not a surprise or coping ahead and having contingency plans. And so often I feel like
Mhm.
those things don't happen. And then you're in a room and you hear these things or you confronted with them and it throws your amygdala into the freeze mode. And there you are with not, you either have support and it's either quick and adequate or it's not. And if it's not, then we know the outcome. And to me, it's like
Mhm.
this could be really resolved by just, I'm sure, as you know, just changing a couple little things could turn that whole thing around. So I'm
Absolutely.
glad
I
you've got
agree.
you're doing the work to get the data. I love data. Love data.
Yes.
So
Well, and
yes.
surprisingly, of the data, I think we're up to like 9 states, and obviously 77 could go so much bigger than this for like n equals 77. But most of them are from Colorado because that's my home community. And most of them are 11 to 20 years in the field and have had these things happen. So I am curious of like, what about the green clinicians? What's going on for them? Because
For
some
the
of
Uh-huh.
what
them are having
clinician?
these things happen. The green clinician, the new
The
The
new one.
clinician.
green.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
I say green. I know that's weird,
No,
but
no, no,
like,
no, I didn't understand. So the green, yes, absolutely. Yeah,
mhm.
that's curious.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, like, more to come on that. That survey is ongoing for folks that we can happily share in the show notes if you want
Oh,
to.
please do. Please share
But it's
because I will
enlightening.
take it. I'll have other people take it. Yeah. We have lots of people that love data in our practice and
Nice.
do
Yeah, and in our
research.
Mhm.
community, I think that that would be really powerful to continue to share that survey out as widely as possible, and certainly we'll spread it around because I think that collecting that data as widely as possible to be able to inform not only the clinical community but supervisors specifically to be
Right.
able to be in a position of understanding how to hold space is really very powerful to training future leaders. Yeah,
Yes,
that's
and
great.
that's actually the worry, when you're asking, like, "What am I excited about?" It's this, but also it's my worry because we know that the average clinician is in the field 7 years. That's
Mhm.
it.
That's it.
So, like, the fact that I got a good chunk of 11 to 20 year senior therapists in here was awesome, and also, like, is this resilience? Like, what allowed this to be possible for you when the average clinician is in the field 7 years? So
I
there's a
know,
lot
I
we
have
can do on
so many
leadership with that.
questions. Yeah, I'm like, is
Yeah.
it resilient? Is it what is their attachment style? Like, what is their
Yeah.
I have it's like all the things that you wonder what the trends are. But you're right, that is
Yep.
very fascinating. Or did they switch roles often? And by switching roles, did that gain capacity for them?
Mm,
I'm of the mindset the more you can differentiate in your roles or even flex in and out of some of those, throughout your career span, I feel like that's a way to maintain some capacity.
Yeah. And as we've talked about today, it's leadership. Like, how did the people around you rally? How'd they help you? Did they offer anything? Or they like pull yourself up and keep going? Like, I think that absolutely matters from my own lived experience with these traumas.
Sure.
This needs to be a professional journal series of articles, Kara. Like I don't think I knew that the average career span was 7 years. And I'm actually like afraid to tell anyone that. I think we should just
Right?
edit that part out because I'm afraid for people to know that. I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna say honestly, like that the thinking about the early career clinician who has gone to school for what, like 2 to 3 years and then goes through, 4,000 hours in Virginia of
Mm,
direct service and 200 hours of supervision. So that's 2 years to be licensed. And then what? They're gonna work another 5 years, and then
yeah.
basically then they're what, 26?
Yeah, so I had someone,
You're
uh
right.
I'm just like, "What?
you
What?
know, I have
Then
known
what?"
someone to leave the field, and one of the th and so as a result of someone who was leaving the practice and leaving the field, like I did a lot of research into that, concerned, of course, from my perspective of like, what did I miss as a leader? Did I
Mm,
contribute to this? Was I a part of this? Or just, and so one of the things that I uncovered is I just did a lot of research around burnout in general and the vulnerabilities to burnout. And what I think could contribute to some of this, of course, I have no data to back it up, so it's just,
mm,
just a hypothesis at this point, is I think that there are people who go into the field and go into the field for with a ideal outcome of what
mhm,
it looks like to be in the field. And I think they come in with a lot of vulnerabilities towards burnout already that are never assessed, considered, talked about. And it seems as though they don't even get confronted with that. Like they're given general burnout information, but it's not like, let's assess your vulnerabilities for burnout. Like you are at a higher percentage of risk for burnout than say this person. And then being able to even talk about the different types of rest and
mhm.
how to measure that. There's a rest quiz out there that's phenomenal that tells you about the different types of rest. And so I kind of wonder if some of the people that don't stay in the field, it's because one, what they visioned it was going to be like was not accurate. And then
Mm,
two, they went in with a lot of vulnerability to burnout and not a lot of resiliency to kind of counter that and weren't really given the opportunity or the education around it. And you think about it, like the person, like you said, self being in the center, and you've got these three things coming at you, your expectations are off. Then you have the
mhm.
low resilience, then you have the high risk factors for burnout. I mean, you're like it's almost like suffocated in it is what it seems like to me, which is really sad.
It
Because
is.
again, I think this is something that can be fixed and I think we could do better. And so I'm like, why are we not doing better? Why? Why are we not doing
Mhm.
better? If anyone knows, please chime in and eventually let us, the three of us, know because we want to know why we aren't doing better.
Give us some thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think collecting this data is a great start, Kara, and being able to get
Mhm.
this data that you're collecting and then the report that you're coming out with, it sounds like you're going to be able to create some really powerful training for supervisors as a result of that. And then hopefully collectively, the supervisors that you're in connection with, and certainly we are 1000% behind you and will join with you with open arms to support that as well,
Mhm.
can work together to provide the kind of resilience training and
Mhm.
support for the next generation of clinicians so that we can expand to a longer, to more longevity for the career because
Yes.
we're doing a lot of work. Universities are doing a lot of work to train. We're doing a lot of work to
Mhm.
bring people into the field. And if we're doing all of this work to bring people in the field and to train them and to supervise them, we need to keep them in the field.
Yes.
And that's
Mm.
just, it makes me really sad to think that people would stay for such a short period of time and the responsibility ultimately, I really feel a huge responsibility as a supervisor to figure out in those early years, what is the capacity of this clinician long term? So
Yes.
Right.
let's use this data that you're collecting and let's use it wisely to be able to inform us. Thank you so much for doing that work.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's my hope. So let's stay in touch on it because it's just going to keep going from here.
Absolutely, absolutely. What's next for you, Kara? What is also happening in your world that we can shout out?
Oh,
Anything else?
yeah. I mean, I've written 8 books. The eighth one is publishing in June. The ninth
Just
one is half
wrote 8
written.
books? Goodness gracious.
I'm
Oh,
She's a
I
addicted to
love it.
powerhouse.
writing.
I love
Yeah,
it. That's
yeah.
amazing. That's
Yeah,
huge.
it's fun. It's a way to exercise the brain that's not client facing, right? So I'm all
Yeah,
about secondary income streams and diversified income streams. We're
because it
actually
gives
doing our
you
first.
capacity, see?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then we're actually doing our first healing from leadership trauma training here in Colorado in a couple months. So like this is all like full circle. Like I've been thinking about this for years. I've healed myself, and now I'm partnering with a colleague to have a somatic experiencing beautiful retreat for people to come in saying like I've been burned, I've been betrayed, I am now a people pleaser, I'm now a workaholic, I'm now a perfectionist
Mhm.
because of some of this, and I want that to shift. So that is
Yeah.
also coming.
That's fantastic. That's really, really exciting. So
Yeah, never boring.
personally, what are you looking forward to this summer? Are you doing anything exciting?
My spouse has a big birthday, so I've been saving to go on a trip. So we will be going on a trip here in just a couple weeks, actually, after this recording.
Can you
That's
tell us
exciting.
where?
Hawaii,
Yay,
Oh, nice.
that's
all the
gonna be
money.
fabulous.
I
That's
know,
gonna be
right? Costs more than half the countries you could visit. I'm kidding.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been an intention for 2 years, and we're making that happen. And then of course we'll start planning for my big birthday because I come after his. So, but other than that,
yeah,
just some local things here in Colorado. We're blessed to be in a beautiful place where we can go up to
Mhm.
the mountains or go to the lakes. So lots to
so fun.
hopefully have as a slowdown this summer. Hmm.
That's fantastic. Well, we would encourage anyone and everyone to get your book, which is The Empowerment Model of Clinical Supervision. And they can find you. If I remember correctly, it's the empowermentmodel.com. Is it
Supervision.
the empowerment
Yeah.
model supervision.com? Yes,
That's right.
exactly.
Hmm.
And then they can find esupervisionrecord.com is the ESR, right?
That's right.
And any other ways they can find you? Those are the
We're on
best, right?
Instagram. We'll like link all the things in the show notes. But yeah, find us
Mhm.
online. We'd love to connect.
Absolutely. Yeah, fantastic. We are so excited to have spent time with you today. Thank you so much, Kara. And
Mhm.
we're really excited also to be looking at your data and to be able to be informing supervisors about how to support the next generation of supervisees with all of that resilience training. And we're just super big fans. So thank you so much. Thank you
Cool.
also to our listeners for tuning into this episode of Supervision Simplified. Remember, the revolution starts here, and we hope you'll subscribe to Supervision Simplified and that you'll share it with your friends and colleagues. And we also want your comments, stories, and feedback so we can be sure to be talking about what interests you the most. Until next time, keep on simplifying and elevating your supervision game.
Bye.
Bye.